I've chosen Flickering Lights by Thomas Jensen. That's the Danish way of pronouncing it. And it's a movie that's set in it's like late 90s, early 2000s. It's a movie about four men who for several reasons choose to go in hiding from a gangster, and they go in hiding in Jutland, which is sort of like the country area of Denmark, with a couple of million kroner. And to begin with, they just hide out, but later on they come to find connections in the area with people who live there, and end up actually liking it and staying. That's a short preface, but the movie is more like it's like a comedy slash drama, and it's one of the movies in general that heralded the like a new way of doing comedic dramas in Denmark. There's specifically Thomas Jensen. He does a lot of movies where it's so absurd, so weird, that you sort of get swept up in the absurdity and laugh at stuff that really shouldn't be funny, but it is funny because it's presented in that way. A lot of violence, a lot of really broken people that you end up loving at the end. Other movies in that range is the Green Butchers and Adam's Apples, but I chose the first one because it's so seminal for that genre in Denmark.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, I literally just finished it hours before the podcast, and it was an interesting film. I think I enjoyed the premise of the film more than like the later parts of the film. Like I think maybe part of it was I had a different expectation. I thought it was going to be the story of a bunch of criminals turning their life well, I guess it sort of was in a way, like turning themselves around and like finding a love of cooking and a love of taking care of people and sort of not exploiting people, but like connecting with a community and giving back to a community or whatever. But it really wasn't that. Like it starts off with this very sort of sentimental, romantic coda, like, imagine this restaurant that just has a beautiful atmosphere and you can see the staff looking on with satisfaction. And then I kept waiting for the criminals to kind of arrive at that point, and they never really did until the very end, where it flicks to the end and everyone suddenly arrived at the restaurant. Most of it is just kind of this quite dark, violent story, as you say, with moments of very pitch black comedy and absurdity. I think the comedy, I liked the crime element of it. The idea of criminals running away, sort of reflecting upon their lives and how they became broken and how they found each other. I like the idea of lost people sort of becoming a family, becoming a sort of patchwork family, and realizing that they actually do need each other, realizing that there's more to life than just trying to get money and make money and escape the law and escape your demons, escape your past, that there is a sort of, they'd found what they were looking for. That was kind of sweet. But I don't think the comedy part of it really connected with me. Like I chuckled a few times, but some of the sort of comedic beats I found a bit disturbing, like he starts shooting cows, and where the leader like punches that woman in the face. Like I was like, is this meant to be funny, or sort of am I meant to sort of laugh out of shock, or I don't know. It was a bit strange, and like the some of the locals kept saying these really racist, kind of xenophobic things, and I'm like, are we meant to be? I wasn't sure who to side with. Like a lot of the characters seemed really unlikable, but you sort of understood kind of where they were coming from the more you learnt about them. But yeah, I think I enjoyed the first act more than where it went. And this was something we've talked about in previous episodes, where often foreign dramas you'll really be able to connect with, but sometimes comedy. We did a comedy called Day of the Wacko for Polish Cinema Roundtable, and it didn't quite connect with us, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's a culturally specific thing. But I certainly enjoyed Flickering Lights more than that film. Yeah. But what did you make of the characters and their journey, Patrick? Did you have like a favorite character or a favorite performance?
I like all the characters in general, but I think it's sort of how they work together. That's Ulrik Thomsens character. I think it was Peter. Is probably the best for me because the way he shows a person in like in withdrawal, and the way he does that is really amazing. And also the switch he does as soon as he gets let out in his character and his way of going at problems is very good. So yeah, of course, my favorite character is probably Peter. But in general, it's just a really good movie about, in my opinion, about people who are so broke.
Yeah, that was quite an uplifting moment where he reflects, because he's trapped in that, whatever it was, pantry. He's forced to reflect on his past and the traumatic experience that he had with his father, locking him in the cupboard, and then wanting to get out of that was quite, like sort of moving and showed an unusual level of depth for the characters, what the characters were up until that point. And I think, that's probably common for all the characters. They're kind of trapped in these traumatic moments, like Arne's relationship to guns, and Stefan also running away from his family after the miscarriage. I think Arne was kind of, even though he's kind of in some ways the most reprehensible character, he's like just so quick to resort to violence. I also kind of liked his change where he eventually just starts like hurting everyone, attacking animals, and it's really horrible to see. But eventually, as the hunter says, he just needs to get something out of his system. And once he starts hunting and focusing his violence in this kind of structured way, he is able to kind of relax. And when he comes back to his friends, he's much more relaxed and chilled out, and even is supportive of Stefan and his romance, which was surprising. So yeah, I definitely think that theme of characters who are broken or trapped, almost like they've been trying to escape it all their lives, like with drugs and violence and crime, and they're sort of stuck in this place where they can't run away from it, and they have to reflect on it and deal with it once and for all. Is kind of interesting.
Yeah. It is interesting that most of the characters here, they have some sort of break or traumatic thing that happened to them. Like Arne got abused as a child, and he resorts to violence. It's just very interesting that and very true that people tend to replicate the things that was the hurtful things that were done to yourself as a child, and or try to fulfill whatever thing you needed as a child, and that's true for all the characters here. We have like Torkel who just wants his own place, just wants to be has his own place. You have Peter who just wants to get out. He just wants to be accepted, and he does at the end get accepted. Also, he was forced to smoke, or his father tried to force him to smoke a lot of cigars, which is like addictive, and he gets an addictive personality. That's also interesting. And then you have Arne who got abused as a child by his father.
Yeah, which is a strange sort of concoction of themes to put in a comedy. Like when I think of comedies, even dramatic or crime comedies, they tend to lean more towards the comedy side than the dramatic side. I can't think of many. I don't know. It's an interesting mix because those are quite dark, heavy themes. But they do it quite well. There's parts that didn't quite work for me, but they do sort of ride that line in an interesting way. And a lot of it is sort of just the banter between the different men. But you did have this question about what the movie says about masculinity. And a lot of the flashbacks sort of show the bad male role models that a lot of these characters had. So I wonder if you had any more thoughts on the theme of masculinity in the film.
Yes. When we talk about masculinity, it's very much a topic about how people have been brought up to, tackle the different problems in their life. And I think very much it's very obvious here that a lot of these characters have sort of a over masculine, over violent way of solving their problems, at least to begin with in the movie. And maybe it shouldn't be, connected in that way to masculinity in general, but it seems like they just go from hyper masculinity, don't listen to each other's problems, you just suck it up in a way, and during the movie they sort of become more accepting towards each other and their problems. They help each other more, and even though there's basically no female characters that we can connect to in this movie, they sort of mellow out in a way that sort of more 2020 2022-esque mentality at the end. They sort of mature in a way from these small boys with an idea of what's masculine to actual men who rely on each other and rest in their own ability to live their life as they want to. It's an interesting way of showing that they probably, and this is true for a lot of people in around the world, that there are these lost people who have no connection to what we would say is the general culture in whatever country you're in, and they tend to look like caricatures of what masculinity is thought to be and stuff like that. And it's only by being confronted by other people and other cultures and other areas of your life that you sort of maybe get like a reality check. And I think that's very much also a theme in this movie specifically.
Yeah, and the film sort of starts with Thorkill being unsatisfied or struggling with that role, that sort of violent role that's been etched out for him, where even when he comes home and there's a surprise party waiting for him, his immediate response is to open fire on the guests because he's just been conditioned by that sense of fear and violence being like the only way to sort of survive in the world. But on the other end of the spectrum is Stefan, who's like quite sympathetic and sensitive. Like even at the beginning, you see them getting angry at this truck driver for delivering the wrong shipment, and he's the only one saying, give him a break, don't hurt him. And then sort of halfway through the film, he starts reading this poem and crying, the Flickering Lights poem, which is what they named the restaurant after. And he's really moved by it. And two of the other characters are sort of, listening to him. And then, but Arn is sort of making fun of him and mocking him and calling him names for tearing up. And he quickly has to defend himself and say, I wasn't crying. So you can kind of see that socialization of men not being allowed to show their feelings, or risk being ridiculed in effect there. But that's kind of the pivot where some of the characters are moving towards that, and whereas others are still holding on to that really macho persona like Arn. But what did you? I was curious about the poem because they named the restaurant Flickering Lights, and the movie is named Flickering Lights, but I didn't quite understand the significance of it. What did you think?
The significance of the name is, well, to be fair, I think it's more like a joke in itself. It's because the author of that book, of that poem, is actually Tove Ditlevsen, not Ove Ditlevsen, as the movie says, which is because the mouse have eaten the mice have eaten the T in the name of on the book. So it's sort of like a reference to the idea that it's never going to be never going to be completely full and proper people. That's not how this movie's going to end. It's like they are going to be their amalgamation, their approximation of what is normal, and that's exactly also what you think when you see in the final scene where they go out and provide that extravagant, or maybe not so extravagant, meal for Torgil's ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend, who are going to review the place, the restaurant. They just put on a show and try to understand what's really going on and what's real, and they come really close, but never really reach like true normalcy. That's basically what it's supposed to, portray, is the idea of not being able to reach what you really want because you're so broken, but having something, even though it's not like truly like everyone else, is still something better than. You can still improve on your life, even though you won't reach the same heights or same things as other people do.
Yeah, sure.
Like all the characters in general, all male characters in general, have some sort of issue that doesn't really get resolved, but it improves because they have this place now. The Flickering Lights.
That's interesting, and it's a very anti-Hollywood way of making a movie where everything traditionally has to be wrapped up in a neat little bow, and everyone's stories has to be completed, and their arc has to be completed to some kind of satisfying conclusion. Whereas here it is, these people are very messy, and they're not wholly redeemed, they're not wholly good, they're still very broken and arguably bad people, but they're trying to move towards something better. As sort of as much of a patchwork of individuals and a patchwork of people as they are. The thing that's occurring to me now is the flashbacks. I thought it was interesting how whenever they're remembering something, the flashback scene doesn't start as a whole, but it kind of starts like this flashing thing, which I kind of evoked the flickering light to me as well. Like the idea of looking back at where you've come from, looking back at the darkness and the light. So the memories kind of flash and flicker in the periphery of your mind. And every now and then you look back and see where you've come and get glimpses at who you are, or where you might be going, or where you might have come from.
I think that's right, but also, I mean, I think that's very real. I don't know about you guys, but I've had several moments where I was in a place and then suddenly I got like a flashback to something I did when I was young, and it's basically takes over your whole sensory system. And sometimes, and usually for me at least, it's something stupid I did, and I go back afterwards. I wish I hadn't done that. That's the power of the memories. Even though they're not like true copies of what really happened, they still have the power of, dredging up past and making you reflect on it at opportune times, which is very, very, very useful for humans, because we need to be able to learn from our mistakes. Otherwise, we that's our demise as a race, as a species.
Yeah, just following the same habits without examining where they're leading you, just doing it automatically. Did you have a favorite sort of joke or funny moment in the film? Yeah.
My favorite joke is definitely where they're blowing the egg whites and egg yolks out of the eggs to make. It's a cultural thing in Denmark. You blow the eggs, as they call them, as you call it, to make Easter eggs. You paint them afterwards and hang them up or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing you do, a tradition. And the way the woman, like she harps on Torgil, making him so frustrated that he definitely does something that is that should not be funny in itself, hits her as a way to resolve the building frustration. The way the friends afterwards try to mitigate that or try to mediate so that he calms down, that's for me the funny part, because they say, that's a sick chicken that laid that egg. It's definitely not your.
Yeah.
Uh,
The eggs
that's-
broke. The eggs were wrong and stuff.
yeah,
Trying to soothe his
Uh,
ego. Yeah, that was funny.
yeah, exactly, and that's actually become like a thing you say for stuff. Like that's become a line that you would say as a joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if it's like a computer, you could say that that's the sick chicken that laid that computer right there. You shouldn't worry about that. So that's definitely my favorite joke or line. Other than that, I think Peter's jeg skal have noget til næsen. That's that whole where he's going with withdrawal. And it's and me listening to myself saying these things, I understand how absurd and horrible it sounds, but yeah, the most extreme situations, they found a way to, make it more absurd to the point of actually being sort of funny. And it's weird. I think you need to watch it, and you need to know that it's so absurd that's why it's funny. That it's not meant to be like a manual to how to act in any situation. No, none of these people are role models in any way, or is supposed to be good people. That's very much important.
And I mean, that is a legitimate source of comedy. Like just watching bad people do awful things. It's sort of has this cathartic release for the audience where they're gobsmacked at what's happening. I think my biggest laughs were when Peter sort of escapes and sort of runs into the water, and Thorkill looks out at the bay and the forest and says, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful!" And it's this moment of uplift. And then Arn says, "You're stepping on a condom." And then he reaches down and says, "Oh, it's got a couple of little floaters in there," and starts chasing him with it. And the other moment, which I think hits so well, is at the very end, where you're expecting this triumphant ending of his ex-partner, giving him this great review and saying what a great job he's done turning his life around. She says, "This is by far the worst restaurant I have ever dined in," but it doesn't matter because they tried their best. That was funny too.
Yeah,
which goes into that theme of it doesn't matter if you succeed. It's just as long as you give it a go. That's worth it.